Atari recently released their collection of minigames for the Nintendo Switch. I wanted to take a couple of minutes to talk about my experience with a review copy of Atari Flashback Classics. First off, let's start right at the beginning. The menu looks pretty rad. I love the nostalgic colors. I like how everything looks like little cartridges. I think that that's really cool. Other than that, there's not much to the menu, but that's fine. I mean, that's not really what this is all about. If you don't know about Atari Flashback Classics, there are 150 games in this collection. Now, that may seem like a lot, but most of them aren't that great. Most of them don't hold up very well. It's not that they were bad games when they came out. It's just, by today's standards, they're not very fun, and some can just be downright frustrating. Atari says that they use the unique features of the Switch. I wasn't quite sure what they meant by that. I kind of anticipated that that would mean HD Rumble, which would be kind of cool. Imagine having the HD Rumble go off when your ship blows up in a game of Asteroids Deluxe, but that isn't the case. What they were just actually talking about was the fact that they allow you to use the touchscreen for some controls, and we are going to come back to that in a second. I want to talk about a couple of the other features first, though. The game features online leaderboards, which I think is really, really cool. It gives people a reason to keep coming back and checking to see if their high score is still up there. I don't know how widespread this would be, and I don't know if it's cross-platform for the for the leaderboards. Like, if you're playing on the Xbox, are you on the same leaderboards on the Switch? That's a question that I don't know the answer to. In addition to the leaderboards, they also have online connectivity, so you can theoretically play against somebody else on one of these old games. So I could host a session, I suppose, pick the game that I want to play, and go ahead and play some other stuff while I'm waiting. And in the top right corner, there'll be like a little flashing icon that says, hey, you are open to allow people to connect to you. So you just play the regular stuff while you wait, and then hopefully somebody connects to you, and maybe you can play a round of combat together. Now, at the time of recording this, I never actually had anybody connect to me. I never saw any other hosts hosting. It is pretty early on. I mean, the game came out 4 days ago, so I'm not sure if that's just the case of not having very many people around, but if I were Atari and I just released this, I don't know what I would do. Maybe I would have bots running so that people could experience the online gameplay. I'm not sure. Perhaps if the game takes off, there'll be more opportunity to experience the online features. That being said, I think it's really cool that they included this, because the idea of being able to play a game like Combat, which I poured hours into when I was a kid on the Atari 2600, that little tank game, I would love to be able to play that online with people. I think that that's a really great idea. But again, I was unable to connect to anybody. The graphics obviously vary from game to game, and of course they're graphics from a million years ago, it seems like, so they're not very impressive, but I was actually really surprised how awesome some of the vector style games looked. Like Asteroids Deluxe, for instance, even had the background art below the gameplay, which is exactly what it looked like in real life. I was excited to try this out because I actually have an Asteroids Deluxe arcade cabinet in my office. Black Widow is a really odd game where you play as a spider defending your web from other spiders and flies, and then when you defeat them, they drop money. The colors in that game really pop off the screen when playing it. And I love the art frames on the side of the screen. There are options in the display options. You do have the ability to change how much the vector graphics kind of glow. And if you've ever seen vector graphics in real life, then you'll know what I'm talking about with that. And if not, just, you probably see some of the gameplay in the video if you're watching this over on YouTube. If you're just listening to it on the podcast, then head over to the YouTube channel so you can see the graphics, because they're pretty cool. At first, I thought that some of the games were literally unplayable. For instance, trying to play the arcade version of Crystal Castles it's unbelievable how fast the character moves around the screen when using the joysticks. It made it really hard for me to get a feel for the game, and I was really disappointed. But then I decided to test out the touchscreen, and when I realized that that's how you're supposed to control some of the games that had like a roller ball or games that had a dial, and if you're not old like me, you probably don't know what I'm talking about, but some old Atari 2600 games had a paddle where you would twist a knob on the paddle to move things left and right on the screen, or up and down, kind of like Pong. There were arcade games where there was a giant trackball in the middle of the control console, and that was how you controlled the game, and that just does not translate very well to a joystick and buttons. So the fact that I was trying to play games like that without the right control input that's just not available on the Nintendo Switch or any other platform really, it didn't make a lot of sense. So as soon as I pulled out the Switch into handheld mode and started using the touchscreen, I was able to do really well in one of my childhood favorites, Super Breakout. Like, I loved playing that game when I was a kid, and I was able to play it again. And this is something that I've not ever been able to do. I do have a RetroPie loaded up with old Atari games, and most of them are just unplayable because I don't have the control option available to me. On this, because I have access to the touchscreen, suddenly it played like it did when I was a kid. Not perfect, but pretty damn good. Each game has an instruction booklet, which is pretty cool, though the scans felt to me like they were kind of low res. It didn't look very good when you zoomed in closely. I think that they could have done a much better job scanning these booklets. I always love looking at this kind of thing. Like one of the things that I do on my iPad is look at old video game magazines and just kind of flip through them. I always really like looking at that stuff. And it was a little disappointing to see how low res the stuff in the Atari Flashbacks Classics was. I think the stuff that comes with the SNK 40th Anniversary Collection is a lot more complete, and I like their rendition of it better. I think that they did a better job getting higher res stuff. But it's kind of cool that you can look at this stuff anyway. The collection comes with 65 achievements that will give you a reason to keep coming back to the game. I think that this is very cool. So, for instance, Frog Pond for the Atari 2600 has an achievement called Full Belly, which you get for catching 100 flies. I didn't even really realize that there was achievements in the game until that achievement popped up on the screen. I was like, oh, there's achievements. That's kind of neat. I've never been one to go after achievements, but I know that there's a lot of people who adore that kind of metagame that can come from having achievements. You could... another example of an achievement is you could try and go an entire level of arcade asteroids with a score of 0. I think a lot of people find this kind of thing attractive, and that, like I said, the metagame will pull people back. A very cheap way to continue to not monetize this game, but to keep people engaged with it, would be for Atari to have DLC achievements, not that cost money, but just free DLC achievements. Here's 10 more things that you can try and do in these games. It wouldn't cost Atari any money to add these things to the game. And if they just brought out like one a week, I think that would keep people engaged with the game and It would make the leaderboards probably be more populated, and if people are engaged with the game, then maybe they'll also have host games, and they could also have achievements that are related to online play. I think that would be really cool. At the end of the day, the Atari Flashback Classics collection, it comes with 150 games, but most of them are pretty terrible. So I guess the real thing you have to ask yourself is, are the ones that you really want worth the price? So look at that list of games, and maybe you look at it and you say, oh, I'm sold just by Tempest alone. A lot of people would say that because Tempest is widely regarded as one of the best arcade games of all time. So maybe that's worth it to you. I can't really answer if it's worth it to you. The only thing you can do is look at the list of games, which 150, and maybe there's something on there that really jumps out at you. I did notice that there were quite a few that I remember playing as a kid that I never had the instruction booklet for, and now I'll be able to go in and maybe actually be able to figure out how to play games like Sword Quest Earthworld or Sword Quest Waterworld. I've never been able to figure out those games when I was a kid because I didn't have the instruction booklet, because I got everything secondhand. Anyway, thank you for listening, and I'll see you next time.